Hi, and welcome to Manned Up Conversations, where we connect with evolving men to discuss issues around masculinity and manhood, and also provide tools to help us be better for our society.
But then you get exposed to a certain kind of joy and peace, and you're like, you know what, actually my entire life has been on this level, and actually it can be here, so I don't need to be living like this.
Yeah.
But it can become very, very comfortable to live in that darkness as well. I know for a long time, it was more comfortable for me to be depressed than happy, because I didn't trust happiness. Depression I knew now.
What is this joy I'm feeling here?
It gave me fear, but depression I knew very well. I can just lay here because this feels like home now.
Man.
And it's effort to try and leave that house and go to a better neighborhood, right? Let me just stay in this shack because I know what it is. But if I'm going to go and search for houses, search for that mansion, it's work and I'm tired. So let me just stick with what I know,
So welcome to it, man. Welcome to Manned Up Conversations. We are on episode, I think you're on 68.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're pushing ahead, right? It's been a bit of a minute since I did interview-based. I think the last two episodes were reflection episodes that we did on the gender empathy gap and black male privilege. So if you haven't caught up to the previous episodes, I encourage you to do so. But today, I've got a brother, man, that I did something very special and interesting with that I'm actually quite proud of. To have a brother from Pretoria who, I think when I started this, I think I might have said it a few times on the podcast that I've only dealt with people from Joburg. But whenever I have someone from Pretoria, I'm extra proud, man. And especially because it's a young gent as well. Tshegofatso Sephula is here. He's the author of Mental Decay. We're going to post this up on the page, but if you can see it, for sure. Brother, welcome, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.
It's an honor.
It's an honor, man.
Really
man, I'm honored to have spoken to you, man. I'm like, to hear young black men speak about our experiences in the way that you did in the book and in the previous episode. By the way, the episode is on the John Craig
YouTube channel,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, so go ahead and check that out. But just your understanding of it, but more so the experience.
Yeah.
I guess it gave you the language and the tools, right?
I was kind of forced into understanding, man. Yeah, the experience by fire. I came to be in the position I'm in right now. Yeah,
by fire. Yeah, I love that. So tell me a bit about, we're not the same age, but we're pretty much of similar age, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm starting to understand now about a lot of these mental health challenges and issues that we're seeing in the country is that a lot of these come from apartheid times, right?
Yeah.
Stuff that our parents couldn't actually talk about.
Yeah.
And I know we covered this quite a bit in the topic that we had, but we didn't really expand on it in that way. So how are you seeing some of the conversations being had amongst, some of your peers as well?
It's funny you mention apartheid times. I'm seeing now, like, the more I get into understanding the human mind and just child development especially.
Sure.
How we don't just inherit our physicality from our parents, in their DNA, where we're starting to find now that we inherit some of their traumas as well. And so a lot of the things that they couldn't talk about, we're maybe inheriting in a way it's not verbalized. Perhaps in a spiritual, physiological way, we're inheriting a lot of their fears and traumas, and we end up with some of these disorders.
Man.
And it's lifetimes it builds up over lifetimes. It's generations on generations. So it's not a spontaneous thing.
Sure.
I don't have depression spontaneously because I'm an individual. I'm carrying a lot on my shoulders, things I don't understand, things I'll never know about. So that's been very interesting. And to touch on the conversation we had last time, I think it was a really brilliant conversation, and seeing the reception I've got. It very much seems like men are hungry to talk about and hear about these things. I mean, seeing the likes even, it was maybe 70% men, which is amazing to me. It's not just women saying, I hope our men can open up and talk about these things. Men are saying, I'm so glad you guys are talking about this. I'm so glad that there's a space for us to listen to some of these deeper issues that we're going through on our own.
Man, I love it, man, because there's also a narrative that, men don't talk. Men don't want to express themselves, and men don't take mental health seriously.
Yeah.
And there's some truth to that. But from what I've been seeing through engagements, and like you say, it only takes for someone to actually listen. And
yeah, I think like that line of men don't talk is becoming outdated now.
Okay.
Because we are talking more than ever, I think. That may have been the case with our fathers, definitely. But I think with our generation, we're talking. Not only are we talking, we're desperate to talk. We are feeling like we're a bit scared. And I think we're reaching a point in life where we're finally reaching a state of vulnerability to be able to say, you know what, I'm a bit scared right now.
Yes, sir.
And even if it's not projecting it to the world, but as a group of guys, we very much latch on to one another. And as soon as we can find that safe space, then we pour out, man. It just flows. Every time I'm with my friends, I know we're going to get deep. And it's not just talking about the sports or whatever. It's going to get really, really deep. And I remember the last time I'd hung out with my friends, when we were saying goodbye to one another, one of my boys said, "Oh man, thank you. I needed that recharge." And I like that because that's exactly what it is. When we get together, it's like a recharge because it does feel like you go out into the world and you're in war. You're out in war, and when you come with your boys, now we can recharge and go out and fight again the battle that is war. But I think in terms of men not talking, I'm seeing the opposite, if I'm being honest. I'm seeing the opposite, and I think it's just a matter of creating more spaces where we can talk and creating spaces that feel safe enough for us to go in and speak, but we're ready to go.
Because that psychological safety is important, and I love that you brought that here. A lot of times I'd also argue that we don't talk to people because we don't trust people. Man. I don't feel safe to talk to you about certain things. So obviously I wouldn't verbalize stuff in that. But I might walk into some spaces where I don't even know these people, but just listening to their conversation and the safety that I feel there, then I might just let it all out, you know? And then people might be surprised. We spoke about guys that know you from your childhood, right? Guys who've always known you while you're growing up, and they surprised man. Tshegofatso now, what's going on here? You write about this in your book where you say you were getting into a lot of trouble with your teachers, and your parents or your mom was like, "But what do you mean?
Is this guy?
This kid is quiet at home. How is he causing a ruckus at school?" So there are these things that we navigate as guys, right? Maybe it's not that you didn't feel safe at home, but then the space at school was something
I'd
very
say
different.
it was exactly that. I didn't feel safe at home, and I think that's something that I could only make sense of when I was older, looking back. There came a time in my life, probably when I was like 19 or 20. And I was just trying to figure out, how did I get here to this state of depression and anxiety and ADD and OCD? How did I get to this point? Because everything was going fine. So in trying to track that journey, I found that I couldn't really remember my childhood. Like 0 to 10 years old, it was a blank. It was the first time I tried to think about it. And I was like, how is it that I can't remember? And so I made the conscious effort to introspect and think, what was my childhood actually like?
How was that experience? Because I also think about, and as you said, and when I was reading it in the book, I was like, man, I remember reading Carl Jung's work and doing shadow work, right? You kind of have to use, if you don't have a reference, you can use pictures. And that, right? So what was that for you? What did
funny
you
you say that. So it was pictures. I went through and I started going through my album, collecting pictures. I took photos with them on my phone, and I just tried to think back, man, to my grade. What grade was I in? Because I could remember my school very clearly. My school years I remember clearly, but it's like, from school, walking into the home door, suddenly there's amnesia. So I just try to piece that back together. And I just remembered that there was always commotion in the household. There was always some sort of commotion or drama. And I just remember that in my child's mind, I wanted to just stay out of the way. That was how my childhood was, just staying out of the way. So that's why they thought I was very quiet. I may not have necessarily been a quiet child, but my job in my head at that age was to stay out of the adult's way.
Pretty much hiding, right?
Exactly. It's rough, you know? And so I realized I never felt safe. I never felt a state of relaxation in that household. I was just trying to stay out of the way. At school, I felt way more safe. I had friends who I felt loved me, wanted me. They saw me.
Yeah.
They saw me. Yeah. So there, I could be extravagant and outgoing. That's why the teachers say this guy is distracting students in class. But to my family, it's like, this guy doesn't even speak when he's at home. How's he distracting? But I didn't feel safe at home, and I could see growing up that translated into my life and interactions with human beings. I never felt a feeling of safety. I never felt a solid foundation in my life. So there was always a game I was trying to play with someone that I met.
Yeah.
How am I going to be with you? Do I need to hide from you? Do I need to intimidate you? But there was never a safe where two human beings that get to know one another. I always felt like I might be attacked or I might be abandoned.
But then how did you make friends? Because in my experience as well, I mean, I remember when I mentioned some stuff from my childhood, you were like, oh man, that was exactly me. But I was like quiet, right, at home. Also with my friends, I'm very quiet, very moody, right? But when I think back, I'm like, man, I had so many friends. Yeah. I don't even know how I meet those friends, right? I know so many people, but I was hiding. So speaking about pictures, like I used to be afraid of pictures. I actually have a period in my life where I don't have any pictures. I don't know what I look like.
That's so crazy. Me too. Like I hate pictures. It's funny when we were doing the John Craig thing, I'm like, oh my goodness. Now it's like, it looks like a photo shoot and I haven't taken pictures for years. If you ask my friends, I'm always like, no. I don't want to take pictures. Yeah, same.
Man, that's wild, man. So I mean that goes with like sort of an identity crisis, so to speak, right? And you will find that maybe a lot of us, man, don't have the best reference point for who we really are. Because our father's identities are also quite messed up because of the very same thing. So now that the youth is changing the language, right? Where I would argue that 3 years ago we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. Maybe probably some people would have. But the younger guys, I was like, they seeing these things and they're starting to talk about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So how do you think that their identity now is being influenced by us, by seeing us now having the conversation in this way, right? Yeah.
Man, yeah, that's a huge point to bring up, that identity crisis. And it is, especially like places like the workplace, when it comes to asking for a salary. I remember at a job I had, knowing I'm the hardest worker here, like when it came time to ask for some grace or a salary increase or whatever, I was scared, I was timid. The instinct is to hide, is to cower away. And you bring up apartheid. I always used to tell my friends and my brothers, man, I want to feel how it looks like white guys feel, even white guys our age. They walk throughout the entire world like it's their bedroom, like they belong there, you know? But as we walk into a certain restaurant and it's like, you don't want to make too much noise, you just want to sneak to your seat. I won't be an issue, but I want to stomp around as well and feel like I belong here. And that comes from knowing who you are and being proud of who you are. But when your history is so damaged and violent with apartheid, but then taking a step further, when your history has that blank, we don't have fathers in our life. So it's just this gap. And that gap, it takes a toll on you when you want to set up the grounding for who you are, what you represent, the legacy you're going to leave. You can't do that with this entire half missing.
Exactly.
You'll feel like a phony, man. You'll feel like a fake. And so, it causes a lot of damage and a lot of years of soul searching. And in terms of youngsters now, I hope what we're doing is helpful. I don't really know. The way I can gauge it is especially with my two younger brothers. They're in the same generation as me, but the age gap is so big that I can keep track of the youngsters through them because there is quite a bit of a gap. And I can see that they love seeing elder black guys like you and myself be vulnerable because there's a lot of things that they're talking about, or rather thinking about, that maybe they aren't sure. Can I talk about this? Is it fine to comfortably talk about this? There's something like I've written in my book, like the gay panic. Like, oh, damn, am I gay?
Oh, man.
And talking to all of my friends, they all had that at different times, but we never spoke about it years ago. It's funny now we've established, but I feel like that's a part of getting to know yourself, even as a young boy. Like, oh, what's happening? Am I a gay guy? And you get really scared.
That experience, man, is... And it's got to do as well, I think, with my experiences with sex, right? I mentioned this in one of the interviews and possibly on one of the episodes on the pod. I had a very interesting introduction to sexual activity, right? So with that, when I came then into the fold and I started being the one who's pursuing instead of, being groped and whatever, then it was a bit weird because I don't understand this dynamic.
Exactly,
right? So then that's when I started thinking that, man, maybe I'm gay, dude, and I couldn't even tell my guys about it.
Exactly.
But this good friend of mine, and rest in peace to Sean, man. If you listen to Manned Up, you've heard this name so many times, but Sean actually said that to me, that, some point I was like, maybe get gay nyana.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, I was thinking about that too. Like, what are you talking about, right? And for a lot of guys who probably wouldn't admit that, I think it's a very brave thing for someone to even mention, right? Especially in times where the gay people are even like shunned upon. Right? Now being gay now is cool. But back then you can't be talking about
That's what I'm saying. I call it a gay panic, because when you had that thought, you're like, damn it, I'm gay. Like, how am I gonna live with this now? Like, to tell people like what's gonna happen. It was a real panic, and I came to find that all of my friends have had this thought or have crossed this bridge, and in growing up and finding themselves. Then it's like, man, hiding this can make you feel really lonely and isolated and scared, whereas we were all doing it. So if we felt safe enough to speak to one another about it, then we can say, okay, it's okay though, we're growing up. So I think you and I even just having this discussion, I hope that youngsters can see this and feel some calm, whether they are gay or not, but just feel like, okay, no, it's fine to think about it, to go through this,
Man. Because you don't want to damage other people. I think that's a danger of living with those kind of thoughts. And never really going in and exploring them. What does this actually mean? And by exploring, I'm not encouraging anyone to, if you feel like you're gay now, start sleeping with guys. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. But investigate that a little bit, right? Ask questions. There's nothing wrong with asking a question. Society has become we spoke about it, man. We're so unforgiving. We're so impatient.
It's such a weird thing, because like on paper, it looks like society is becoming so big and all accepting, but in the same breath, it's becoming very judgmental and very small. Like we're saying we're accepting everyone, but we're also in this fight to put everyone into a specific category. And if you deviate from your black and white, you're cancelled immediately. So there's a weird juxtaposition where we're saying be free, be yourself, but not really. Only to a point, or else we're going to cancel you. So it makes it hard to navigate.
And that's spot on observation. I mean, there's a course I'm doing on male psychology, and one of the criticisms of social education, so to speak, around mental health is that, men end up in a double bind, right? And as you specifically said it now, that, we're saying that men must ask for help, men must do this, men must talk, right? But if you look at evolution, man, you cannot ignore evolution. That the man as a protector, he doesn't see himself as someone who needs to be protected, number one, right? And it's so hard for a man to just release himself from that script or remove himself from that, because it's innate, it's built within us.
It really is, man.
It's really, we inherited this from grandfathers,
is the world ready to see that version of a man?
Exactly.
Like I was telling my friends, man, with my ex-girlfriend, I think I cried too much. Like she told me it's okay for you to cry, I want to see a sensitivity. After the fact, I just realized, man, that maybe not. Maybe a girl can say to you, be super vulnerable, but in practice, it's a different thing to see it.
Different, man.
And I think we're going through this period now where we're adjusting. We haven't seen this version of a man that we're calling out for. A man who is vulnerable, is crying. I mean, a lady doesn't want to see a guy crying all the time, because you do want to protect her at the end of the day. Whether it's indoctrination after all of these years, whether it's something that's innate in us as human beings because of how we've been made. So I think, it's a tough transition, and the guy needs to be vulnerable, but I was okay, don't push it though, because you're still a man, you still need to be a protector, you still need to be strong. In the trenches, you don't want to be looking at your general and he's crying next to you, right? You want to see him ready to go. There's a plan in place. So it's tricky.
And tell me about now the idea of writing a book. So Warren Farrell speaks about this in one of his books. I think the book is called The Boy Crisis. And in one of his reasons why men need to read that book or read more about men and boys' experiences is that the world of media, the arts basically, we've learned so much about women's hardships, struggles through the media.
Yeah.
And when it comes to men, we usually get given books about personal development, get rich, make money, right? It's never really books that inspire us to like check in on ourselves and work on us.
That's true.
Of course, personal development is that, but it's personal development for corporate. It's never really personal development for you to just be well within yourself, spiritually, mentally, and all of that, right? So, plus we're dealing with very low levels of literacy. Like reading in South Africa is also a challenge.
Man, it's right? Sad to see sometimes that,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now we've got a book and we're dealing with all of these dynamics. Yeah. So how's that the response to the book been? And, comparing that with your expectations when you're writing it. Yeah.
So, man, expectations. While I was writing it, I was also working consciously on having zero expectations. This was a scary thing for me because for up to writing this book, I had maybe a 2.5 period where I was unemployed, wasn't really sure what was happening. I wasn't depressed. I just established a relationship with God. So I was feeling really, really great, but still not sure where God wants to take me, what I need to do with my life. Yeah. So I was in this raw period. And when I started writing the book, I knew that my ego is still very fragile at that point because whatever's going to happen next is going to show me where my life is going. It's kind of going to show that none of this has been a waste, all the pain or whatever. Yeah. So I was praying and making sure that God, I'm going to write this book, but this book belongs to you. And I want to trust in my heart that you're going to put it where it needs to be. You're going to show it to the person that needs to see it. And wherever I'm going with this book, I'm going to trust that it's your will. So God, this is your book. That way I'm not bringing my ego into the fold. I'm not coming through like, hey, this is the greatest book ever. You need to buy this. I'm fulfilling something I feel that God has put in my heart. And afterwards, it's not up to me. It's not my book anymore. I'm going to go where God takes it. And so my expectation was low. Yeah.
Man.
And the reception has been amazing, man. Especially from adults, man. It's funny seeing my mother's generation almost healing through this book. And it's amazing, also sad to see that they haven't really had an avenue to speak and to speak honestly and openly.
Yes, sir.
Yesterday, we visited one of her friends who's going through a very rough time and their children struggle with mental illness. But the mother herself was saying, man, I'm going through such a rough time. Actually, I'm rereading your book for the second time now. Oh, man. My child is reading it for like the third or fourth time. Yeah. So that, man, is amazing to me that it offers help. And I'm saying in the book, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to solve anything. Exactly. What I'm trying to tell you is that you aren't alone and that there is hope. That's what I've learned, that I wanted to end it for 10 years every day, but I found that there is hope, and that hope is enough to change your life. Sure. And so to see people find that and to say, you know what, let's try. Let's try one more day. Let me go again. Let me just hold on. That's all I wanted. And then that's what I'm finding.
But like it takes work to get to that place. If you're like, well, I know people who really need the stuff. They'll resonate with what I'm talking about here. And, you mentioned something quite deep about depression. I think one of my teachers around the stuff is Parker Palmer. I'll recommend one of his books to you. And he speaks about depression in such a, I know you call it the devil. And I can understand, because his analogy also kind of alludes to that. And he says that if you can ride the monsters of depression, you'll come out on the other side a completely different person, right? But if you don't, it can absolutely kill you, right? So we have people who've probably gone through depression and not even known it. And they come out and like, man, exceptional people. And everything has changed for them, right? But maybe they've never, even maybe our parents, we could say, they've never really looked at things like that. So that importance of actually identifying it while you're going through it, it's crucial, but in most cases, everything is in hindsight, right?
Yeah, after the fact. You're like,
Sure.
Yeah, no, true. It's like you have to, man, you need to know it. But if you don't know it, you can get stuck in there for a majority of your life because pain and darkness can feel normal. Like even in the Bible it says, beware, Satan can come disguised as light. So you can feel like this is what life is supposed to be. But then you get exposed to a certain kind of joy and peace, and you're like, you know what, actually my entire life has been on this level, and actually it can be here, so I don't need to be living like this. But it can become very, very comfortable to live in that darkness as well. I know for a long time it was more comfortable for me to be depressed than happy because I didn't trust happiness. Depression I knew now.
What is this joy I'm feeling here?
It gave me fear, but depression I knew very well. I can just lay here because this feels like home now. And it's effort to try and leave that house and then go to a better neighborhood, right? Let me just stay in this shack because I know what it is. But if I'm going to go and search for houses, search for that mansion, it's work and I'm tired. So let me just stick with what I know, So it can become comfortable, but you need to fight for a better life. You need to fight for joy, man, and peace. And like God says, like, you don't need to earn that stuff. It's given to you. You just need to reach out and take it. And I realize in any point of my life, no matter what's going on, I can choose to fight and attain joy and peace, even in the eye of the storm. I just have myself. I can sit there and find a joy and a peace within myself.
And you find that when you tell people I'm depressed, I like what Mark Tuggle says. Like, I'll tell someone I'm depressed, and they try to do something about it. Like, there's nothing you can do. And that's got to do with the fixer in us men. Right? That you often think like there must be a solution.
That Superman
and
complex.
How do you deal with that? Wow. I mean, I'll give you a random example. You spoke about work and losing a job and wrestling with that, right? So I had people who were quite pitiful of me. And I was like, I'll take your pity, but like I can't do anything with that. And someone asked me on social media as well, like, well, what do you do with someone who's pitiful? I mean, thank you for the pity. So I don't know, and you can't compare it to depression. But at the time that I was depressed, because I never spoke about it, I didn't even know I was depressed. Right? But my friends would call me this moody, Mr. Moody person.
Oh yeah.
And I think in those moods was me trying to actually, like, man, I'm going through something that I can't explain.
So that's how you try.
But I appreciated my friends because they never tried to do anything about it. In fact, they would be like, he's moody. Let's actually go see that. And they would hang with me, right? But just having them around was so cool.
Exactly, man. I think that's the greatest thing. A lot of, like you're saying, we have this Superman complex. We want to swoop in and save someone. And man, it's unfortunate that a lot of the times that darkness, you have to attack it on your own.
Yes, sir.
And I like that you said that just having them there. It was an occasion during COVID. One of my best friends, his father passed away. And I went to his house and I said, man, I don't have anything for you. I can't fix the scenario at all, but I'm just going to sit with you tonight. The whole night I'm going to be here. If you want to laugh, let's crack some jokes. If you want to sit and cry, we can cry. But I can't fix this for you, but I can be here, so I'm going to be here. And that's, I think, the point I try to make with everyone in my life. Everyone I say that I love is that I won't have answers, but you can bet that I'm going to run to you and we'll sit there. And if you need something, then I'll do it. But I'm going to be right next to you. And I think that's the best, man. It's like... I'm saying everyone needs to face it on their own. It's like a fighter. You're going to walk into that ring on your own to fight the opposition. But your friends and family are around the ring. They're cheering you on. They're right there with you, although you're on your own in there. So that's all you can do at the end of the day is make sure the person in the ring fighting knows that you're right there, standing right next to them. You're outside that ring, there.
Man. And we spoke about something a bit earlier before we recorded. And, I want to set up the father story a little bit for later, but we're talking about being exposed right now, and this is to do this. There's a level of vulnerability, but there's also an exposure, man. Speaking about experiences like this is not. It's not for everyone. It's not easy to do. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Right, but it's just a matter of just expressing it. So I often feel like, man, after I do something, I'm like, oh, damn. I think I shared a little bit too much there. But it's, again, it's that safety that I felt and how comfortable. But more than just that, it's not a performance, right? I want to share so that the other person who's afraid to share, because I know what it's like to not be able to do that. I want you to feel free and have that safety wherever you are, with whoever you choose. But how's that been for you, man? I mean,
it's funny you mentioned that, man, because there was this, I had to shoot a little promo on the 26th. I'm at State Theatre, so doing a little promo to invite people. So the facilitator sent me the video of the promo, and there you can see like some of my disorders coming out because I'm anxious. You see my hand tapping on the thing. Some insecurities are like coming out, and like, man, I spoke to her, I texted her, I'm like, man, is this set in stone? Because I wanted to change the whole thing. And then I'm like, yeah, I look anxious and all of that. And she's like, but you are anxious, right? What's the problem with showing a little bit of anxiety? And then a different way it clicked to me that, oh yeah, I don't have the luxury of framing and making everything look pretty anymore, because I'm saying that I want to show myself bare and naked because I want to help people. So I need to show myself in my entirety. That anxiety that's showing on that video, I'm anxious. And I said that. I've written a book about it. This is what I'm talking about. So for me to go now and try and hide that doesn't make sense. And it's not the path I've chosen. And it just dawned on me like, damn, this isn't... It's tricky stuff, and it's you don't wake up every day feeling like exposing yourself completely. Sometimes I don't even want to talk about myself. I don't want to dig into this painful stuff at all. But that's the goal. This is what I want to do with my life. So it's part of the responsibility, man. I can't make it look pretty all the time. And if I'm going to make an impactful, real difference, it needs to be seen. I need to be naked and bare. So yeah, it is difficult though.
Man, I love it, man. Now, we did an episode on shame a couple of seasons ago, and when it comes to sexual stuff now, there's a lot of shame there because firstly, consent is not a real thing. We're gonna have an episode on consent at a certain point, but for you, in terms of understanding sex, learning about sex and consent, how did you navigate the shame of the experiences that you had there, man?
My introduction to sex was terrible, man. So I mean, like 3-4 years old, and then my cousin started showing me porn. A lot of porn. So immediately my perception of sex is warped. And then it gets physical now between me and these elder girl cousins. So immediately there's a power imbalance there. So my mind as this young child and in the most sensitive of developmental stages is getting, the wires are just getting crisscrossed and my understanding is all out of whack. And then when it came to high school, now people are starting to have sex and stuff. I'm scared of this thing. All my friends are talking about girls and stuff. And I'm like, man, how are you guys doing this? I'm terrified of the sex. How is it so natural for everyone around me? But to me, it's this big, daunting, scary thing. And the first few times I tried to have sex, man, I was in my head.
You couldn't do
it.
I
couldn't do it. Physically, I was dead, man. My penis isn't working. I'm just.
And you're a young guy at the time.
I'm a young dude. So I'm like, what is going on, man? What's going on? And that makes you feel so lonely. It makes you feel like a reject. Makes you feel like less of a man.
You're not a man.
Yeah, exactly. That's the
because
that's the whole
if
thing, dude.
He's not ranking, then geez,
that's the whole thing. So it's destructive, man. Self-esteem is gone.
Man.
Shame is is on 100. You're just so shameful. Obviously, you're not going to tell anyone at that young age, man.
Man, it took me a while. Man. It took for something really big to happen for me to actually speak about that.
And then I'd get very hateful of the women that I was trying to have sex with. I didn't want to see them at all afterwards.
Yeah.
And that's because they saw me exposed. They saw me vulnerable. They saw me in the worst part.
Oh, man.
They saw that young little boy who was scared, who doesn't know what to do, who doesn't know what's going on.
Yes, sir.
These people that didn't even know that well, they got to see that.
You got quite aggressive with them. Like,
I just hate them afterwards. I don't want to see you. I don't want to talk to you ever again.
Man, I'm laughing at it. Might sound insensitive, but I'm laughing because I know exactly what it's like.
Yeah, so it's really, it messes with your mind, man. It really messes with your mind.
I mean, I bring this up, and this is a big part of a mental health, because there's an episode that I listened to. I'll plug that into the show notes where an American organization is working with men around their sexual experiences.
Yeah.
And you find men who are 80 years old speaking about their first encounters for the first time.
Yeah.
So they've never mentioned it to anyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can just imagine, how did that man live all of those years with that secret?
Goodness.
Eating
away at him.
Exactly. So it lands us back again to family secrets, man, which are quite big, especially in our black families.
Yeah.
We have this sensitivity. We tiptoe around stuff that, I guess maybe back in the days it was like, man, you're going to destroy the family by talking about this stuff. But it seems like you and your mom are so open, man. You're so open, and I love it. And I have to shout your mom out as well, because she's doing beautiful work. Breast cancer awareness, but also mental health.
Yeah.
So how is that dynamic? Because you often talk about, boys are raised by their mothers.
Yeah.
You operate from a kind of a deficit. I can see it in some ways, but then, I look at my experiences with my mother too, and I'm like, man, I'm actually thankful that I was raised by this woman. Because there's so many other benefits to being raised by a mother that we often don't speak of.
Yeah, no, it's been a beautiful and difficult experience being raised by a single mother, man. You'll know it gets really tough for this one woman to carry a family, man. It's hard, and she's raising 3 boys, and she's a female, so to understand the inner workings of what's going on, what's this man's instinct now as I'm growing older, he's becoming a man, so maybe there isn't that relatability. So it's a dancing act for a mother, man. So much respect for single mothers, especially raising boys. But the reason I'm so open, I'll say, definitely stems from her, man. And she grew this openness and this transparency, I think, unfortunately, through pain. One takes so many hits in life, and you get to the point where it's like, not I don't care, but man, this is who I am, and everyone can see my scars now. There's no hiding from this, because it's just shaped and built me into this monster. Let them see me. Let them see me in my entirety. And she's always been open with me throughout my entire life. I mean, my father was never a secret to me, although he wasn't in my life. Growing up, my mother always told me, this was your father, this is how we met, this is what happens, this is where he lives. Hey, I heard this is happening in your father's life. Hey, this is happening. So I've always known about him throughout, a play-by-play of his life, And that openness, I think, has made us very strong as a unit, my mother and I, as a family. And it's also just made me feel like I'll always be backed. Not having a father can bring about an insecurity in a young man, and it can feel like there's no ground beneath your feet. But having such an open mother has made me feel like, okay, there's solid ground. If I fall, I'll be caught. And even if she hates, because in the book I speak about some of the dirtier things I've done. Even if she hates the act that I'm doing, I know that should I fall, she's going to be there. Yeah,
sure.
So it's been super helpful.
Man. And we talk about this idea of atonement with the father, man. And that's hit me like a ton of bricks, because finding atonement with the father for many of us, it's like, well, it's like that search, right? But it's ultimately the search of who you are, who you are meant to be, your destiny.
Exactly.
Who are you? And you find a lot of men who don't have fathers are actually in that. Again, without really realizing it, until you do your work around, that search for a father. What does it mean to not have one? But the often interesting thing is that it's a lot of creative guys who who end up on that quest.
They think too much, yeah.
Right? Is it because you think it's because we think too much? Is it something that maybe, and maybe, I don't know if it's a weird question to ask, but they say things happen because God planned them.
Yeah.
Is it maybe God decided that I'm gonna use the creatives in the world, to be that light,
so,
for people to say, this is what you can pursue.
Yeah, I think definitely, man. I think maybe a lot of the times it's creatives because there's this instinct to search for something deeper, like all the time. And maybe it's also being felt by non-creatives, but creatives are able in some way to articulate that or to dig deep enough to find that this path leads back to this absent father.
Right.
Whereas someone else might just think, oh, I'm an angry person or I'm this kind of person. But creative might dig a little deep and say, okay, there's a root. And this root goes back to this guy. This phantom guy.
Yeah.
And fathers, man, it's been a heavy trip with that because for the longest time in my life, I thought it didn't bother me. And I think it was because my mother was so open. It just felt like, okay, there's nothing for me to explore because I know everything about him. He's my father. He's not here. Okay, that's the full story. That's it. Man. But then growing up, man, it's like, oh man, I'm really thinking about. I'm becoming a man now, and now I'm thinking about this guy a lot. And more so, and now I'm thinking of having kids of my own. I'm thinking of becoming a man. I'm thinking, what legacy do I want to have? I want to have a family. Then I was really thinking about this guy, and the less he made sense to me. I think I could never hate him growing up. Yeah. I could always instantly empathize with him. He was a young guy. He got scared. He left. For some reason, I could never.
It was probably my fault.
Exactly. That's the internal dialogue probably that I didn't realize. But growing up, I'm like, man, this guy doesn't make sense. He's a coward. And thinking now I want to have a son of my own, and I'm his first child. I'm a boy. I look very much like him. My stature's like him. So in me thinking of legacy, I'm like, man, that's the dream. Isn't that what any man would want?
Exactly.
A boy who looks like me, that can grow up together. And he ran away from that. And then you start thinking, okay, but now he's got a family. He's got 2 kids. He's taking care of them. So it's like, okay, it's not that he didn't want kids. It's that he didn't want me specifically. So now, man, this goes down a rabbit hole. The more I thought about him, the more bothered I was. The more unsettled I was. And the more I started to feel like I was going to be stuck in my life unless I face this guy.
Yeah.
And so I DM'd him. I was like, we need to meet for coffee, And then he gave me a call. I was like, when should we meet? And hearing his voice, he sounded like me. And he laughed like me. It's the first time I heard his voice. Man, my heart, I can't explain that feeling, man.
There's nothing like it, man.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, and I think that's what fathers, children are searching for. It's that you can't put it into words, but that feeling when he spoke and he's like, this is my father.
Man.
But the first time I'm hearing his voice, there was some interaction he had with my mother and they were talking together over the phone and they had a laugh. And it was the first time I ever heard my parents speak to each other. And this is me at 29 years old.
Man.
First time I hear their voices conversating. Yeah, I felt like a child, man. I got goosebumps. I was like,
man. Yeah.
What is this? But that inexplicable feeling is what is missing. And nothing can cover that except for the person that is built to fill that space. Like our mothers are amazing. Definitely. But they are mothers. And mothers can't be fathers. They can try and fill all those gaps, but we are designed in a specific way that no matter how small, but that little thing you can only get from your father.
That man.
Yeah. So that's what you spend time searching for. That's why you feel sometimes inadequate or that void.
Yeah.
Because only that person, unfortunately, can fill it. And so, those interactions, man, they made me feel.
Hey, man, I know exactly what you're saying. Because my reaction to my dad, seeing him for the first time, didn't know him. That man was looking the other way, flipping through CDs. I walked in to look and listen. He right here in Mainland.
Oh, I remember
and
that
I was
look and
like,
listen.
oh, that's him. That's him.
Man.
And like, man, I was just like happy to see him. I can't even remember what you spoke
Yeah.
about. You know, I just know I got the games, later CD, that documentary. I got it from my dad, and I was like, yo, thank you. You know, a couple of bucks, and that was it. You know, just seeing the man for me felt like, oh man, this is quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, no, it's crazy you say that. It's like seeing him from him facing the other way when I was going to meet my dad for coffee. So I got there a bit earlier because I'm nervous. Yeah. So I'm walking up the steps and I see someone by the ATM and I knew instantly, oh, that's him. And then I didn't go up to him. I just watched him walk to where we're going to meet. I was just watching this guy from the back.
Man.
The walk is the same. And I was like, yeah, that felt like an accomplishment, man. But during that meeting, I just saw, I saw that he was a coward. That he should have been there. In meeting him, I was no longer able to make excuses for him.
Yeah.
Because now it was in my face. You know, you have this thing, if you haven't met him, that maybe there's a piece of the story my mother hasn't told me. Maybe there's something that he'll tell me that will make it make a bit more sense. But it was exactly as I'd known the story to be, and he just wasn't there. So that was like, oh man.
Man.
Ah,
man. You know, man, Tshegofatso, man, I think there are many instances where guys have met with their fathers and like, man, this is not what I was expecting, you know? Like, damn.
Yeah, that anticlimax, man. And like just searching for that trail of why, because everything is connected, you know, nothing comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it's only God that can create something out of nothing. But as human beings, every behavior, everything, it comes from somewhere and there's a pattern. So tracking back with him, I know he lost his parents. I think by the time he was 12 years old, he had no parents, you know. He said to Soweto, he's growing up with uncles and these are men who are men. So I'm thinking there's no avenue for him to explore his feelings, to explore what he's going through, not having parents. So I can imagine, man, that he grew up with many deficiencies as a man, inadequacies emotionally. And when he found out as a young man he's having a son, he must have been scared out of his mind. How am I going to be a father? Like, man. And that leaves us sitting here talking about absent fathers. So we need to stop that at some point.
But I like that we now have an understanding.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that the sons or the children, because some girls also do, or some women also do, that we have an understanding of, man, this is what that man went through, and we can empathize with him. And in some cases, we can even forgive that man. You know? But then, man, it hits me so hard then for the people who never forgive, you know?
And you see that turns into anger and bitterness. Exactly. And that's a scary thing, to be a bitter person like that, because, man, you end up creating the same sort of environment for the people around you and for the kids you're going to have, you know. You may be present and you think you're better off being a present father, but if you're a toxic present father, you're creating damage still. So the cycle is still going on. It's just a different leg of it.
Yes, sir.
So I think the most important thing is to heal.
Man.
And you need to be empathetic in order to forgive someone. So I think empathy, and it is work. I like that you say work. It's not simple to forgive someone. It's not simple always to empathize, but it's important, and not even for that other person, but for you to live a joyful life, man. That's my goal now, is to have joy and peace. I think there's so many extras in life, and if I can cut that out, I'm going to cut that out. I don't need to be carrying hate. I can have a brilliant time now with my friends and family. I can do this and empower people, and my life can be that simple. And so I'm always looking for ways to chop out hate and darkness, because I don't need anything to taint that. It can be that simple, that beautiful. That's the goal.
I love that, man. You know, man, we should do plenty of these, because when we speak of, and when I mention like resentment and holding on to things of the past, maybe in not so much a parental type of situation, but some of us have lost jobs, man. We've lost things, right? And we're still kind of holding on to those. So my example with my job, for lack of a better example, I knew when I left when I got fired that if I had to go work somewhere else, it's not going to be very very conducive
Yeah.
for those people,
Yeah.
because I'm still holding on to this thing, you know, and I might just go in there. It doesn't matter who's there, you know. I'm still in my mind.
Yeah.
These people
Yeah.
did me wrong. So if I see any hint of like
Oh, yeah.
something sideways, then I'm already
Triggered.
a target, you're an
Yeah.
enemy, right?
So that shows that you need to love yourself first.
Yeah.
Or else
Yeah.
that dictates how you're going to treat another person. If I am a better person, I'm going to see bitterness in the world. I'm going to treat people with that contempt. But if I've worked on myself, if I've mastered myself, if I've reached the place of peace now, I'm going to see peace in the world. I'm going to see it, or I'm going to see an opportunity for peace in everything I'm doing. I'm going to approach a person with love and not with fear, not with hate. So definitely to start with yourself, it's not only great for yourself, but it's one of the rare cases in life that is truly a win-win.
That's it.
Where I've fixed myself, I'm good for everyone around me, and the people that I touch will be better off because I'm good as well. So yeah, I think it starts with self, and it's not selfish,
Man.
but it needs to be self.
You need to be selfish, man.
Yeah.
That's been my term for this year. And I've been the most selfish I've ever been, you know. And I was listening to you a little bit before this when you were talking about letting go of certain things. I decided as well, like, man, you know, I've been so busy trying to build up this thing and being available to everything and never turning things down because, hey, you know, I want to be out there. But I also realized that, man, I'm being very unkind to myself, you know, because in my moments I sit back and I'm like, I'm really tired.
Yeah.
You know, I'm exhausted. Like I'm spent. I'm emotionally spent. I'm psychologically spent.
Yeah.
And I have very little to give to myself. And that's where moments like cycling for me then start coming into play where, you know, when I'm on the bike, I might be thinking about things that went wrong. I could have done this better, but at least in that moment, in that 2 hours or 3 hours, whatever time that I'm cycling, I can then isolate those things, those thoughts, right? And I can work on them and say, okay, man, let me actually stop and record a low voice note so I don't forget whatever, right?
Exactly.
So we have to create those things for ourselves. And I think a lot of us have things to do, things that we are already doing. Maybe the intention is not so much there. Right? We don't intentionally take time out of the day, as Carl Jung in his book says that, you know, we have to have a certain time in the day where we don't know what hour it is. We don't know what day it is. We don't know where the hell we are. And of course, that's not to say just be stupid, but just be, just, you know, let go.
Now, I'll
of
tell you,
things.
sometimes I love load shedding because my phone, I can't charge my phone. Everything is off. I can't tell what time of the day it is. I don't need to feel like I need to respond to someone immediately. There's this. It almost feels like the world is on pause.
Yes, sir.
And I think that's important, to pause the world, to not feel like I need to know what time it is at every second. Oh, as someone texted me.
Yeah.
To just have that blank, that void. It's just, I'm just
You
being.
need it, man.
Yeah, I think that's amazing, man. That'll give you a centeredness. I said on that show that I've started breathing now. And it's just to quiet the noise, man. It's just to quiet the noise, because every other time my mind is working, and whether you overthink or not, just I think a prerequisite of being alive in this day and age is that your mind is
Constant.
It's going, There's so much information. And that's scary and it's dangerous, man. Over a long period of time. You get congested, man. You get congested and you get frustrated in ways you don't understand. You just feel yourself being restless.
Man.
It's just like there's so much going on, even in the subconscious. So to just clear that time, to clear it out, a little piece of every day, I think that's been, man, it's made me so much more appreciative. It's made things clearer to me. It's given me much more joy. I can't stress the helpful nature of that, of carving out that solo time.
Man. Yo, man, this is so informative. I want to keep on going, but for the interest of time, I usually leave this to the end, and I'm glad I remembered this time. But, you know, I usually ask this question is, what if you know, there's a lot of things, or there are a lot of things that we say, you know, men should do this, men should be this way, right? And I'm laughing, man, because I feel for the guys who listen to the pod and guys who are just constantly reading and trying different things, that it can get a lot. It can be overwhelming. Right? But we have to have our go-to type of thing. So for you, man, what would you wish for guys in SA? Let's speak to the young boys, actually. You know, what would you wish for young boys? So one thing that you just wish for them to either do for themselves, to be well,
Yeah.
to feel good, or just, man, to just have a longer and more productive life, I guess.
My greatest wish for especially the young guys is to take time to master thyself, to know themselves outside of their friends, outside of their family, outside of society. It killed me creating my persona based on these three components. And in that creation, I had no idea who I was when it was time for me to step up as an individual. I'd say figure out what it is that you actually like. Do you like a polo or do you like a Taz? If you like the Taz, that's completely fine. But build yourself from as early as possible to feel that sense of contentment. Master thyself outside of everything.
Man.
That is my biggest,
Oh, we gotta master ourselves, man. You gotta start early. I love that. I love that, man. So you can't be living for people. You gotta live for yourself, man. But of course, this has been another informative one, and I thank Tshegofatso for this. Like I said, Mental Decay. You can reach out to Tshegofatso. Where else can you get the book?
Reach out to me 073-202-2730 or on Amazon.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Is the audio version out?
Not yet. Not yet.
Hey, man. So you might just hear Tshegofatso hitting us with the audio.
Yes.
But from myself, Kaugelo Habiani, it's been an absolute pleasure. Peace and love. We'll catch you on the flip. If you haven't subscribed, man, please do the right thing. We're on YouTube. We are on all the audio platforms. You can catch us on social media as well, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And do the right thing.